All right, everybody, welcome back to another show of the Alchemy Pod. Excited to be here with a friend and absolute sales legend, Skylar Adams. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks so much for having me. You're too kind. I appreciate it.
It's good to have you here, man. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, we actually connected 3 years ago.
We did.
Now.
Yeah.
You're an OG member of Alchemy, one of the first people to ever sign up.
Absolutely.
I'll never forget. It was kind of like, I was just kind of figuring out, I think I want to do like a mindset program. First group I talked to was you guys out in Phoenix, and kind of the rest is history from there. That was like before I even knew what Alchemy was.
It's crazy. I had no intention of signing up for it. When I first came up, I was like, hey, I just want to say what's up. And you're just like, hey, yeah, when do you want to get started?
Yeah. Just closing the deal.
That's right.
Just assuming the sale.
You got it done right away. It was
assuming
sick.
the sale.
It was sick.
So one thing I want to do on this podcast for sure is I do want to do some sales training.
Sure.
So I want to hear for the Vivint guys or the alarm guys listening to this pod. We will get Sky to rip your door approach because it's so good, because it's so basic. But We'll get to that. But another thing I want to talk about too is you're also going to be the first guest who was in smart home and went to solar.
Yep.
And now you're back at smart home. So you're one of the few people I know that actually have been fully in smart home, fully in solar. Now you're back. And so I'm curious about how, your experience and how it was transitioning for you. Because there's a lot of guys, this is a kind of a sales podcast, personal development podcast. There's no alignment with any organization or whatever. And so we'll be able to get the raw data here. So I'm excited to dive into that. But before we get there, I'm curious. I don't even know how you got in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, it was, it's actually somewhat typical. I was going to Grand Canyon University down in Arizona.
They were in the tournament this year.
Were they?
GCU?
I thought they were last year.
Grand Canyon University?
Were they in the tournament this year?
I think they're in the tournament this year. Were they not?
I'd have to see. I was watching the games. They might have been. If
Yeah,
they were, I missed it, man. That'd be sick. I know they were last year for sure.
Yeah.
But I was playing golf there, or I was supposed to. And 3 months in, I played golf in high school at a super high, competitive level. But I also played basketball. It wasn't, anything outside of just playing on the high school team. And I went to Northwest Christian, which was a high school in Phoenix, and obviously GCU is a Christian college. There was kind of like a pathway to GCU, and half of my graduating class went to GCU.
Oh wow!
Extra scholarship money just made it a no-brainer for most of us. And when I went to college, it was mostly for the sports. My dad he's been a computer engineer for literally 40 years this year. And he was like, you need to go get a degree in something in the STEM field. And so I went for computer engineering with emphasis in like IT and cybersecurity, whatever.
Dang.
And it wasn't because I was interested in it. It was just my dad did it. He was like, hey, look, if you get a degree in this, my company will hire you. And I'm like, all right, cool. Worst case scenario, I'm good.
Yeah, safety net.
So, So I mostly went for the sports. The degree was just because my dad told me to do it. And 3 months in, all of my starting five on my high school basketball team just so happened to be part of the group that went to GCU, and they had like this big hey, we're gonna go do like a intramural tournament, and I ended up tearing my ACL.
Oh,
first game.
First play.
Yeah, and I'll never forget. I tore it in kind of like an abnormal way. A lot of people tear it when they land, but I tore mine when I jumped. Like when I exploded and went up to go shoot a shot, and I could feel it pop, and I just landed and went down.
Just Aaron Rodgers first game out.
But I did make the shot. So
I
was the only player in that whole tournament to be 100% from the field.
Yeah, tore your ACL.
One for one,
but shooting 100%.
Yeah, but it was so I tore my ACL.
When that happened, what was that like for you? Was that like devastating?
It was funny. I didn't know it was torn for like 2 months. So
did you finish the game?
I did. I wasn't I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
But I was still playing. I wasn't I mean, thankfully it was like a half court tournament.
Okay.
So I could play relative defense, just kind of stand there, move your arms, and kind of just go back and forth. But I just sat in the corner and just put up threes most of the game. And so, I guess I didn't put up any shots actually. Now I think about it, because I made the first one. I wanted to put up a bunch of shots, but it was
just being a little fragile.
It was I guess in my head it was hey, I'm gonna try to just sit in the corner and shoot. But I ended up just kind of being like a passer.
Yeah.
And so that's what it was. I sat in the corner playing defense and I was guarding all the threes.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And so, but it was so interesting because when I tore my ACL, I didn't know it was torn for 2 months. I had gone to some form of urgent care on GCU's campus, and they were like, no, I mean, there's something obviously wrong with it, but I think there's just swelling in your knee or whatever. And then after 2 months, I could really feel it swelling up, and there was definitely something in there. my mom's like, you need to go to like an actual doctor. And on my birthday, December, my mom called me and she was like, hey, the doctor said your ACL is torn. And I was like, dude, that's rough. But I didn't know, like, I had no idea what that process looked like. So I was just like, all right, sounds good, like whatever.
Dang.
And so went to get surgery and dealt with that for, like 6 months. And it was so interesting because right as I was, it's typically like a 9 month.
Were you like on crutches?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's typically like a 9 month healing process to like from start to finish. I got the surgery in December, end of December, and it was like mid-April that one of my buddies got shoulder tapped on campus at GCU. And I was back on my legs, most of the way recovered. And he asked me, he was like, hey, I'm going to this Topgolf event with a company called Vivint. It's like a smart home company. And I was thinking like smart fridges or thermostats or something like that. And he was like, yeah, you should come. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I really want to go. And he was like, well, it's free. And I was like, what? Free Topgolf? I'm in college. I can't afford to do anything. Like, I'm in. So I showed up, and that's where I met my personal mentor, Joe Geneza.
Yeah.
And love Joe to death. I'm
Good
so
guy.
grateful for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a legend in specifically the referral game.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude does half his
no
business.
one does referrals.
No
like
one
Joe.
does
He's
referrals
the all-time
like Joe
go to
Geneza.
Vivint with
He
referrals.
genuinely
Not
is.
even close.
Yeah. And so I met him. I met Nick Elison.
Yeah.
And just some of the names that are like pretty legendary at Vivint now. But yeah, I just thought they were a cool group. And it was so funny because I think it was like a week later. They're like, yeah, we're going to Texas. You should come.
So this is before they didn't even recruit you to a preseason trip. They were recruiting you to summer.
It was probably April 10th.
It's last minute
that they like were talking to me and they were like, you should do this, bro. Like, you seem like a killer.
So what made you make that jump? Like, what was your thought process before you decided to go?
I just liked the group. I was thinking about my summer and I was like, I'm not going to be doing anything big time anyways. I might as well send it.
Yeah.
Like, they're telling me I can make all this money. Like, it's, I told them, I was like, you know what? Like, I'll do it if I can drive my car out. And that, for some reason, made me feel good with it. Because I was like, anything goes south, I can just hop in the car and
just bounce. An escape plan.
And so it was so interesting because, like, I had, I went and talked to my dad. And originally my dad was like, I don't know if you should do this. And I'm like, Dad, I'm just going to send it. Like, let me just do my thing.
And he gave you his blessing.
And, well, he did. And he was like, I want to go talk to your manager. And so
your dad wanted to
my
talk to the
dad,
manager.
yeah. So Joe and my dad met up at a Starbucks.
How'd that go?
Originally, my dad was like kind of iffy about it.
Yeah.
After meeting with Joe, my dad's like, let's run it.
Really?
You're doing
this. What happened in that conversation? Do you know?
I mean, I think it was just, when I'm, you're an 18-year-old kid trying to talk to your dad about like something you're trying to do, you don't understand the difference between like what you think versus like your subconscious level of like what's actually going on. Like, and I would tell my dad, like, yeah, it's door to door selling this. I'm going to make a lot of money. And there's not like a lot of context to that. Sure. And so I think what really happened was my dad sat down with Joe and Joe just provided a lot of clarity to him about like, hey,
two adults in the room.
Exactly. Right. It's like, hey, look, this is what it is. This is why we do it. This is how it works. Proper expectations. It's really difficult, but it's worth it.
And because for most people not in the industry, it sounds too good to be true.
100%.
It sounds scammy or fake or whatever. And you're just like, for most people, their brains just don't work that way. Like, oh, you can go make $100,000 in 3 months. Like, you must be doing something illegal.
Exactly.
Right. And for the average person who doesn't know about high commission sales, it's going to set some red flags off.
Totally true.
Yeah.
Totally true. And so, but after that, my dad gave me the green light, not that I necessarily needed that, but it always makes you feel better.
Well, I mean, when you're 18 years old to get your dad's blessing, it's huge.
It means a lot.
It means a lot.
Yeah. And I went out for my first summer.
Where'd you guys go?
Texas, in Arlington, near Arlington. Yep.
Yeah. Isn't that Dallas area, right?
Yeah. South of Dallas.
South of Dallas.
Yep.
How did it go?
It's crazy. I was out there for probably 2.5 months, maybe 3 months. It was right between like 10 and 12 weeks. I was the last rep to sell. I bageled for a month. I sold 0 for.
Wait, so you were 4 0 weeks in a row?
Yeah.
What was going? Because the reality is there going to be people listening to this podcast who are rookies, who are at Vivint, who haven't sold an account yet,
right?
And they're questioning themselves. Maybe this isn't for me. I should quit, right? What would you say to those guys? What was your experience like?
I mean, I would say like you've got to treat this like a profession if you want to make professional money, and that means it doesn't mean like you start out just being amazingly good. It just means I think there's a difference between like trying hard and giving this professional level effort. And I think for me, I went 4 weeks without a sale I think it was like 28 days or 29 days or something like that. And it was after the third week that I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not making any money doing this, and it's kind of annoying to have to wake up and go knock doors. I should really like try to like pull my stuff together and really give this thing everything I've got. And it was in that moment that I really that's where I kind of built the basis of the way that I do sales and really a lot of my life now, where it's like I'm going to remove any preconceived ideas of how I should try to go like do well at this and just go back to the basics and be like, what is required to be successful in this industry? You know, specifically at Vivint, it was like, hey, you know, make sure you're working all the hours, make sure you have a positive attitude. If you're struggling with something, it's like, a lot of reps come home from a hard day and they're like, well, I'm struggling to transition. And it's like, there's so much focus on where the problem is. And for me, it's like, let's just recognize the problem, get that out of the way, and then just be solution oriented. And it was so interesting because, it was a Monday that I got my first sale, and I ended up selling 4 that week. And all of a sudden I went from the worst rep on the team to like, on a 30-man team, it was like 25 of us. And I was like, all right, now I'm in 20th place. And it was so funny because the following 6 or 7 weeks ended up selling 40.
Just went off.
Yeah. And it's nothing crazy, right? Like there's
from 0, then 40.
Yeah. It was big time. It was big time. And I ended up being the top rookie that year.
Yeah.
Which was crazy.
Did you ever think about quitting?
All the time. Yeah. And actually, it's funny that we talk about how I got into it with my dad, because I'll never forget, there was this house that I went to and I was just getting beat up. It was like 2:30, 3 o'clock right after I got dropped off. And there was it kind of had like this abnormal, like it wasn't like a totally flat yard. Like it had it was like the street was here and then there was like a grass hill. It was like 2 or 3 feet high. And I was like, this is kind of like probably the best case scenario for me to find a place to sit down.
Yeah, like dream
setup. It's like not concrete. I can sit on the grass. It's nice. Yeah. And I sat down, and I'll never forget calling my dad and being like, Dad, like I'm probably gonna come home. Like I'm just not having success at this. Like I'm really struggling. I was in tears. Yeah. And I'll never forget, my dad was like, you can come home, but you can't stay at the house. Like if you want to come home, sure, but you just can't sleep here. And I was like, what do you mean I can't? In my head, I'm like, what do you, like, come back to the house, but I can't sleep there. And he's like, well, you told me you were going to do this. So you have to do this. Like, this is a lesson where you're going to learn to, you're going to do what
holding you to the line.
Right. And I'll never forget, it was all, and it was some tough love early on. And then at the end of the call, he was like, I want you to remember something. You can do this.
Wow.
And it was funny because there's a principle that I live by in door-to-door specifically, or really anything that has been done a lot of times. I always tell people, like, I get rookies coming to me after like a day or a week or like a month of like, hey, I'm struggling. I'm not selling what I want to sell, whatever. Like, I don't know if this is for me. And I'm like, dude, the brutal reality of this job is it's been done way too many times to say that it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, it's not the job, it's you. And I say this, like, I say it to my rookies, say it to my vets, say it to myself. And, it's so interesting. That drives everything that I do in door to door, where it's like, what the things that I'm facing, am I the first one to face this? No. Am I the 1,000th one to face this? No. I'm probably the 10 millionth, 100 millionth, billionth person to face this problem. And other people have faced it and they've gone one of two directions. They've quit and been average or below average, or they have continued through and been killers. And the reality of it is the way that I feel, doesn't change that. Like I could feel however I want to feel, but the fact of the matter is like I have 2 choices, or I've got one choice of 2 options, and I'm gonna take, for me it was like I'm gonna take the option of being a killer, because I'd rather go down knowing I gave it everything I had than give up.
Man, that's so profound, right? I love what you say. It's not the job, it's you. Right? It's not the job works. The job, people have done it.
It's true.
People sell big numbers.
Too many times.
For so many years.
Right.
It worked. My favorite is like, oh, that area's been knocked too much. I'm like, that area's been knocked by 6 companies every summer for 25 years.
Yeah, it's totally true.
It's gonna work.
Totally true.
Right. It's gonna work.
100%. Yeah, no shot that it doesn't.
And I love what you say, just like, if it's not, the system's proven. The system works.
It does.
And it's either there's something wrong with you. And what's great about that too, that I would add too, is like, you have full control over the way you engage and react to the system. You can change your pitch. You can change your mindset. You can change your routine. You can change the way you knock. You're the one in control of changing the levers.
Yeah.
So you just got to find the right levers that work, because the system's proven.
Yeah, it's true. And I think I love that you say that, you're the one that's in control. Because I think another piece of like the way that I live my life is it's just like, this amazing, insane amount of accountability. Like if I just say, hey, look, everything's my fault, like genuinely buy into that and believe that. And if I'm having the worst week of my life, it's totally my fault. If I'm cranking and I'm number one in the company, it's totally my fault. And either way, it's like when you take that level of accountability, that whoever has the accountability has the control. And I'll never forget, I used to have these meetings with my guys, and I would tell them, hey, you have an option when something is happening in your life, whether it's negative or positive. And you have to imagine it's kind of like, I use the example of like a football player, and it's like you have the ball and it's the accountability ball. And you have to recognize that there's so many times in life where something negative happens and the first thing somebody wants to do is throw it. Like, let's go throw the accountability ball to somebody else and say it's their fault.
Right.
But it's so interesting because if you're a quarterback or you're a point guard and you've got the ball, the play could be ran perfectly, but you're the one that dictates the outcome of that play in that moment, right? Like if you make the right pass or you shoot the right shot, or if you're a quarterback, you find the right receiver, every route could be ran perfectly, or somebody could go mess up. It could go any way you want it to. But if you're the one that holds the ball, then it really comes down to you. And I think for me, it's like I used to ask my guys, like, are you holding the accountability ball? Or are you trying to pass it to somebody else?
Yeah.
And for me, it's like I just, I always want to be the one that's in control of as many scenarios as I can be, especially when it comes to things that are affecting me. I don't live as like a control freak, but it's like if I have the ability to go make a difference in something that's going to affect me positively or negatively, I'm going to give it everything I've got. And that only happens if I have the accountability.
And I love that, man. And it sounds like there was almost like this line in the sand moment for you.
100%.
Right. You're calling dad, like, it's funny. Almost every top rep that I've worked with at one point has cried on the doors.
Yeah,
so if you're a rep listening and you've cried on the doors, no shame. All the top reps.
100%. And if you're thinking of going home and you haven't cried yet, like just wait till you cry.
Yeah,
and then
don't quit until you've cried on the doors.
Until you've cried. Yeah,
you haven't pushed yourself hard enough if you haven't cried on the doors.
Well, and if you haven't cried, it's not even worth considering.
Yeah,
like only consider it if you've cried.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't cried,
you haven't pushed.
You haven't given it your all. You just haven't. And
so
that's a good metric.
That's a good metric. You can't go home until you cry on the doors.
Yeah, you can't even consider going home until you cry. It's not even a consideration. The conversation doesn't even start.
100%, man. And so you have this line in the sand moment. Have you ever told your dad about that? Like, hey, like, is it possible you would have gone home if he was like, yeah, come on home, bud?
100%.
Yeah.
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 I totally would have. Yeah.
Your dad was like the one that was like,
my dad saved my life.
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly.
Totally saved my life.
He didn't let you come home.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. My niece, Brielle, she's going to go out and sell for the Grit this summer. And, she's young. She's 19. She's never done door to door.
Yeah.
And my sister, her mom is coming to me and she's all worried. And she's asking me all these questions about door to door. Is she in danger? I'm like, no, she's fine. And I'm like, Michelle, you actually have one job. Brielle's going to call you in May. She's going to be crying. And she's going to be like saying, Mom, I want to come home. And I'm like, you can't let her.
That's it.
You can't let her come home.
Unless
she's in physical danger.
Right.
You can't let her come home. And she's like, what do you mean? But what if she's crying? And I'm like, the best thing you will ever do for her is not let her come home.
There's so much power in that.
Yeah. Just like getting over that hump.
It's crazy how that specifically is like a noticeable game changer.
Yeah.
That one phone call.
So you have this line in the sand moment, you break through, it sounds like you take all this accountability. So when you talk about having the accountability ball, what changes did you notice in your life? Like what are some of the small details that reps might be looking over, and what they're actually doing is they're not taking accountability. So if you're taking radical responsibility, radical accountability for your performance, your experience on the doors, what does that look like on a habitual level?
That comes back to like the mixture of success and what's involved in that, what's involved in that ingredient list. And it's like, for me, I think working the hours is super, super key. And I think that it gets a little bit deeper than just like working the hours. It's like efficiently working the hours.
The intentionality of knocking.
Exactly. And it's like, for me, there's reps that like we're like, oh, I was on the doors from 2 to 8, but it's like, no, like, were you making the effort?
Your physical body might have been there.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's like when I think about, how that really affected me in my decision making, it was like if I'm out of the doors, there's a saying I like to tell my reps where it's like, do your very best to only knock doors that you think are going to answer. Like if you want to knock a home with no cars, do that. Just push it off to like 5 or 6 o'clock, especially like on the first, the first day, second day. But when I'm out there, it's like I give everything I've got to make sure that I'm doing things that like push me closer to my goal of like finding somebody to earn their business or protect another family. And I'm not going to go do something because I'm supposed to do it. I'm going to do it because it makes sense. When I say work all the hours and have a positive attitude, I don't do that because it's been like the Vivint, saying of like, oh, you got to do the two things. Like I don't do it because of that. I do it because in my head I go, okay, if I was to go acquire as much business as possible, would it make sense for me to go be out there for this amount of time or this amount of time, right? From 2 to 8 or from 3 to 5. And it's like every single time, well, from 2 to 8. Okay, cool. That's a no-brainer. Awesome. As far as having a good attitude, do I do it because somebody said to do it? No. You do it because the attitude that you have is going to be the aroma of the conversation that you have with the customer when you talk to them, right? So it's like, okay, well, do I need to have a good attitude? I mean, technically you could try to go without it, but you're not going to have a lot of success because the only people you'll earn business with are the ones who are like the laydowns of laydowns.
Right.
And so it's like for me, when I think about how that, how this whole picture has affected the way that I sell, it just comes down to doing what makes the most sense. And I always ask myself, it's like, if I was given $1 million to sell 2 today, what would today look like? And that question has forever, that's kind of like the final piece
Wow.
that's kind of shifted the way that I've looked at my life. Because it's like the moment that you ask that question, the questions of ability, where it's like you ask yourself, I don't know if I can or can't, automatically become, I don't know if I will or I won't.
Yeah, they vanish.
Correct.
It's just a matter of will. Like,
Exactly.
Do you actually want this?
That's right. And that's why I tell people, it's like, this isn't like a can or can't conversation.
Yeah.
Like this is no question of ability.
Yeah.
This is a question of decision.
Yeah. When I do my in speaking, when I train in offices, I always ask the question. I say, hey, imagine the CEO of your company calls you.
Yeah.
And they say, for every sale that you get today, we'll give you $100,000 bonus per deal. How many would you sell today? Right. No one in the office is bageling.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you that. No one's going to bagel.
Right.
Right. And so it's not a matter of if you can do it. It's just,
will you do it?
Will you do it?
It's
not ability, it's will.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And it's the same thing. I mean, this is for those rookies who were like, I don't know if I can do this. It's like, dude, there's no question of ability. I could literally give my mom, who's like not a social, let's go talk to everybody person, an iPad and be like, Mom, I've got, TP or somebody who's offering me $1 million to go give us, to go get one sale. Let's just go make it happen. And she could do it. But it's not a question of ability. It's a question of whether or not you will.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think that's why it's so important to have a really big why in the summer that's bigger than money.
100%.
Because one thing that will happen this summer, for sure, for everyone listening, is most people will hit their income goal.
Yeah.
They will. And the moment they hit their income goal, their performance drops.
Yeah, sail off into the sunset, right?
Yeah,
Game's over.
Off, right? There's,
right.
set. And so that's why you need to have a big enough why that's bigger than just income. Because once you surpass your income goal, it's kind of really hard to stay motivated if your only reason you're out there is for money. And so I always say, when I work with guys where they have somewhere like, hey, you have to have your top 10 kind of your why, and it has to have a physical need, a mental need, an emotional need, and a spiritual need.
Absolutely.
Because if not, right, as soon as you hit your goal, you're gonna lose your motivation. And another thing too is that actually, if you have all 4 of those goals aligned, it's gonna keep you inspired to keep climbing the hill on that too. And another piece I want to add, that you brushed on briefly, but you were an example of it. It took you 4 weeks to sell an account.
Yeah.
A big mistake people are making, especially as managers and rookies come in, is that they think they're going to have it figured out their first weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Right. How many times do rookies show up? I'm going to crush it. Right. I'll go through, I'll sell a couple this weekend and then I'll be good. No, I would say on average, it takes 3 or 4 weeks for a rep to find the flow, a rookie to find the flow.
Absolutely.
You might see success. You might get a deal here and there.
Yeah.
But to actually find the rhythm and the flow of the job, I would say it's a minimum a month before
I totally agree.
You find that
totally
flow.
Agree. Yeah.
And so, just to echo everything Skylar's saying is just like, don't quit, stay in the pocket, keep pushing. And now, how many accounts do you think you've sold in your career?
If I had to guess, I'd probably say 1,200. It's
crazy.
Give or take.
Right. You're just about to go home and now you've sold, over 1,200.
Yeah.
So you mentioned.
And that's smart homes.
Yeah. That's
no
smart
solar.
Homes. Yeah. And you've sold a lot of solar too.
I've tried.
You mentioned when you took this kind of like accountability ballpoint that it almost simplified your pitch too.
Yeah.
So to tell us about that, like what
Absolutely.
I would love to hear your pitch.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, it's what I care about is not the verbatim approach at the door. It's the basic framework of the points that I'd like to hit when I'm talking to somebody. And the way that I've built that door approach is totally based in that same concept of like, when I'm talking to a customer, what matters in this conversation? Like what matters to them? What matters to me? You know, I think a lot of times we send reps to the door, you know, or reps just go to the door and they'll just get people who, you know, immediately answer and they're saying not interested, or hey, not right now, or no, we're good, whatever. And it's so funny because like a lot of times people ask the question like, well, what am I doing wrong? When it's like the real question should be, why are they doing that? Like, you know, what are you doing wrong? Like especially if you're new, like you're doing a lot of things wrong, right? And I could list them all out to you.
It's a lot.
But that list doesn't matter, right? Because we can have this massive list of things you're doing wrong, but all that matters is why they're doing that. Like, why are they doing that? And it's like, I think the question is not even like, what am I doing wrong? It's like, you know, what immediate areas do I need to make an adjustment? And it's like, okay, you know, for me, when I go knock somebody's door and the person opens up and immediately says not interested, you know, take the feelings off of the table and just call it for what it is. That customer is not saying that I'm not interested in you. They're not saying that they're not interested in the product. They're not saying that they're not interested in any of that stuff. What's happening is that customer subconsciously, and a lot of customers aren't even aware of this. Like people aren't even aware of like their subconscious beings, right? Of what they're thinking. But it's like, you know, it's ironic because my mom's a perfect example of this, right? Most loving, kind woman on the planet. But somebody answers the door, or my mom answers the door and somebody's at the door. The first thing she's going to say is not interested. And it's so funny because it's like, I asked the question, why does she do that? And it's so funny because the answer to that is because there's been so many people that have come and knocked that door and given that homeowner an experience that's been not worth it or just wasted their time. That is now their automatic reaction. My automatic reaction to everybody knocking my door is I'm just going to tell them not interested, or whatever the objection is, right? It's based around the fact that I've had this experience before. I know what happens here. This looks too familiar. I'm not interested. And it's so funny because that has been the basis of how I build my door approach. Because when I knock somebody's door, the first thing I want to do is I want to make my door approach look unfamiliar.
Yep.
I want to make everything about what I'm doing look super abnormal to the customer because they're not interested in something that they know decently well. But when there's something that they see that's like, this isn't normal, like, I'm not sure exactly what this is, right? A lot of people are going to sit there and be like, I'm kind of curious, you know, they're not going to say that to you, but their actions will tell you that by, it's like, you know, people tell me all the time, Skylar, I'm not interested. And it's like, look, hey, if you're not interested, I'm not going to twist your arm. And they're like, what? You know, most reps go, well, it's okay. Like I'll be, I'll be really fast. It's like, I'm not going to twist your arm if you really don't want it. I'm not going to I'm not going to sit here and give you the runaround.
Yeah.
And so if it was like a fresh door, I go knock the door, right? Customer answers, hey, you know, they're oftentimes they're not saying like, hi, how are you? They're like, how can I help you?
Yeah. What do you want?
What do you want?
Yeah.
And whenever I get a question of like, how can I help you? I always respond with this. Just to be straight with you, I'll tell you exactly how you can help me. And then I go, or like, what do you want? Mr. Customer, I'll tell you exactly what I want. And then I do my door approach. And that's pretty simple. It's like, hey, look.
That's probably disarms them.
100%.
They've never had anyone
exactly,
say that.
Right? Because people are like, oh, hey, no, I'll be super fast. Like,
what do you want? I'll
be
tell
brief.
you exactly what I want.
Yeah. Oh, how can I help you? Mr. Customer, just so you know, this is the easiest way to help me.
I'll tell you exactly how
you can help me. My name is Skylar. I work with Vivint Smart Home. I already know that you get your door blown up with door knockers. Because of that, I'm going to keep this really direct. Is that okay? And every single time people were like, oh my gosh, what in the world is this? I've never heard the confidence. I've never heard it said so concise. I've never heard somebody be so direct.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, if there was like an opening one-liner that I use, it's always the same thing. It's like, look, I know you get knocked a ton, so I'll keep this direct. Like some version of that, like, look, I know you guys got, you guys have people coming by every single day.
Yep.
Just because of that, and I know you guys are cool, I'll be really direct.
Yep.
I specifically use the word direct.
Yep.
Because people use the word brief, people use the word quick, people use the word fast, and it might sound like super small, but it's like when a homeowner hears that, like that's one of those tiny little ticks where it's like, well, everybody tells me they'll be brief, and they're never brief. They always waste my time, not interested.
Yeah, I think it builds trust too.
100%. Especially if you say it like in when you're talking, you're not saying like, hey, Mr. Customer, or I'll be super fast. I'm going to be really quick.
Yeah.
When you say it like really, really slow, it's like a small tip. When I get on my first door, my goal on my first door is to have it be my slowest pitch of the day.
Yep.
Like
really
super,
slow.
super slow. Like
it just brings the energy down.
Exactly. Yeah. Cause you get out there and your heart's racing and you're like, oh, I got to try to figure out how to sell.
Direct with you.
Yeah. And so when they open the door, it's like, hey, look, like I know you've gotten your door knocked like a ton.
Yeah.
Because of that, I'm going to keep this super direct. And it's so interesting because whenever you go to the door and you get those people that are trying to give you pushback, if you just slow it down and speak with crazy confidence,
they'll listen.
I mean, they'll listen to you. Even people who are like not interested, right? You know, and I know there's ways to overcome that. You can just steamroll it or you can question around it, whatever. But it's like if you're just talking slow and you just look a little bit unfamiliar, then you can make a ton of progress with almost any homeowner. And so to kind of just like wrap it all up, it's like, hey, look, I know you get knocked a ton, so I'll keep this super direct. My name's Skylar. I work with Vivint. I'm assuming you're the homeowner, correct?
Yeah, I am.
Cool. I'll just cut to the chase. I do these. And when I say that, I close the gap, right? There's always a gap between you and the customer. I like to close that gap, kind of turn my body a little bit. I have the iPad that, you know, for Vivint specifically, it's showing like the outdoor camera. I always use that. And it's like, look, you know, I'm doing these for your neighbor. I do the outdoor cameras over the driveway with the doorbell cameras on the front door. I don't want to give you the runaround. I'm sure you've heard the cameras that make the whistle sound, correct?
Yeah.
And okay, cool. You guys, if it's a fresh door, it's like, I'll just be honest. You guys don't have anything. It's not a dangerous neighborhood, but obviously stuff happens. I'm just curious as to why you don't.
Yeah. We just haven't gone around to it yet.
Gotcha. Okay. And I guess on a side note, like it's super, super important to acknowledge that you always have an option when you're a sales rep. You can kind of steamroll the objections, or in my case, I love to just use like super simple question-based selling. Cool. You haven't gotten around to it. Let me ask you this. Is it something you feel like you guys would even like? Like honestly,
I haven't even thought about it, to be honest.
That's okay. I appreciate it, right?
Yeah.
And so the reason you haven't gotten around to it is because it hasn't been on your mind.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've never had anything happen.
Never.
Okay. You guys park the cars in the driveway right now. I'm assuming that's how you normally do it.
Yep.
Okay. Let me ask you this, just so I can cut to the chase and be super real with you. If it was really inexpensive and it gave you the peace of mind where you could just kind of keep an eye on the home, is that something you like the idea of? Like not do you want it, but would you like the idea?
Yeah, I think it brings peace of mind to my wife.
Sure, I got you right. So it sounds like your wife might be the one that's more into this than you are.
Yeah, wife and kids stuff. I think we'd feel a little bit more comfortable
cool.
if we had something.
Makes perfect sense. And so it sounds like, you know, most families that don't have cameras, it's not because they've never thought about it. It's because they haven't thought about it a ton. But that does mean that you've thought about it at least for a little bit, right?
Sure,
Most people thought about it for like a half second or like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I think it would be cool. Like I have seen it at other people's houses. And
sure.
I think it'd be cool.
Right. And you might ask yourself once or twice, you know, I wonder what that looks like. I wonder how it works, whatever.
Yeah.
Cool. That's why they send me through here, just to cut to the chase. I'm just here to bribe you to earn your business if I can. I work on commission. I can change the price. I make it easy for all my customers. I'm just open about it. I guess let me ask you this. There's a reason you guys like haven't gone and done it. Is it specifically because nothing's happened? You know, what's the main reason you guys haven't done
it just has been on front of mind.
Love it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I always tell people there's 2 times when it is front of mind. 1 is when I show up. 2 is when your truck is missing out of your driveway. Now, obviously, we don't want that to happen. We hope that never happens, right? But at the end of the day, I'm looking for the people who would consider themselves to be proactive in helping protect the home rather than reactive. You know your wife just, you know, obviously a million times better than I do. If you guys had something like this, do you feel like she might like that?
Yeah, it just depends on what it costs.
Exactly. And that's all it comes down to. Yeah. Between you and her, who makes the decision, honestly?
We do together.
Cool. I got you.
I like to keep her. I mean, I would say I make decisions, but I like to keep her in the know. She wants to know what's going on.
Love it. Okay. And you'll always be real with me, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Even if I ask you the hard questions.
Yep.
Okay. Is she here right now?
She's not.
She's not. When does she come home?
She'll be home probably after 5.
After 5? Okay.
Yep.
When you say probably after 5, what are the chances she's home by 6?
Probably 100%.
100%? Okay.
Yep.
What's the latest time that I can come by this evening to catch you guys together?
We're night owls, so
are you?
10 p.m.
10 p.m.?
Yep.
If I come knocking at 10 p.m., you'll answer the door and won't shoot me.
If you show up at 10 p.m., I'll let you in.
Will you actually?
Yep.
Okay. If that's the case, I'm going to take your word for it. Just to be honest, I could show it to you all I want to.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you guys do it together, I want to be respectful to her. Let me try to catch you guys later.
Cool.
And so that's kind of like...
That's money.
That
you did so
scenario.
many things right there that were so good.
Yeah.
Right? A rookie mistake would have been someone would have tried to close them.
Right.
I wouldn't have.
Well, especially if they're saying come back at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
I'd rather go spend
get another one.
The next 6 hours. I'm like, dude, I'd rather just go get another one now and then come back at 10 p.m.
Yeah, I remember knocking too. I love that question. How late is too late?
Yeah.
It's such a money question. How late is too late? Because you can tee up one really at the end of the day.
You can.
I've had someone be like, hey, like we don't go to bed till like 1, 2 in the morning. I'm like, so if I come by at like 10:30, is that cool? They're like, yeah, come hang.
Especially over the summer.
Yeah.
That's when it's crucial.
Yeah. And so how late is too late is such a good question. I love that question. And then I love that you didn't press the husband, because what a rookie mistake would have been is a rookie would have been really excited because he's engaged and he's asking buying questions and there's interest. And then he would have tried to close him anyways.
Right.
And then what would have happened, he would have gone through the whole pitch, the whole presentation. And then the husband's going to say,
look, this sounds great. I've got to run it by my wife.
But I have to run it by my wife. And then the wife's going to come home and he's like, might forget about it. And like, oh yeah, honey, this guy, alarm guy, 2 cameras is like $100 a month. What do you think?
Exactly. Yeah.
She'd be like, no.
Right.
$100 a month? No. Like,
100%.
Why would you do that? And you're like, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't do it,
Yeah.
And so,
and it's so funny you say that, because like, I know we're talking about the door approach, but that whole scenario in some form or shape is like similar to the I want to think about it objection when you're going for the close. And it's just like I want to make sure I clear the air for like what that objection really means, because again, like I look at things from like how deep can I go on the subconscious level. When you have somebody that you're trying to sell, you're trying to earn their business, and they're going to tell you, hey, Skylar, look, I love this, I love you, I love the product, I just want to think about it. What ends up happening is this, and this is just the hard truth, especially when it comes to alarm systems. The reality of it is if I'm talking to somebody and everything makes perfect sense and they tell me I want to think about it, that is equivalent to them saying we're not doing this right now.
Yeah.
Which is totally, I always tell people, look, at the end of the day, I'm not going to twist your arm, and I mean that. But the brutal reality is this: when somebody says I want to think about it and you end up leaving the home, the whole entire process of them quote unquote thinking about it, first things first, is not like it's an hour-long conversation. You don't leave and then the wife and husband get together and be like, all right, let's pull out our pens and papers and do a pros and cons list, right? But the other big thing is this: every time that it crosses their mind, even if it even does, all that they do is they think about why they didn't do it, and they double down on why they didn't do it. So when you come back, the reason you always get a no, and this is 99% of the time, right? Yep. Sometimes you get the ones who are like, Very rare. Yeah, we thought about it, and our car got broken into. Let's do it, right? But it's like the vast majority of cases, I want to think about it means I want to give myself time to double down on why I'm not doing it right now.
Yep, 100%. And one thing that I would challenge any Vivint rep listening to this podcast, I did this my rookie year, it changed my life. Just promise me, as a listener of the Alchemy Podcast, if 2 guys who have sold, I've sold 2,500 accounts, Skylar sold 1,200, you got 3,700 accounts sitting in these chairs. Do this, promise me this. If you get inside a house and you drop the monthly price with a decision maker, one or both, and they don't do it, don't ever go back to that house ever again.
I think that's great advice. I mean, yeah,
for the 99, for the one that says yes out of the 100, right? You'll get one that might do it,
right?
But then you're chasing them,
100%.
Right? You'll go get 30 more deals on your own on a new customer.
That is totally factual. And the reality of it is, like with those customers, it's like if you really want to go back, like just like do it when you're like, do it at like 12. Yeah. Like do it like way before you're on the doors, or like just like if you're just so happen to walking by and you're like, I just really, like if you must, don't like schedule it in.
Man, I don't know. I say because there's something about like in my head, there was something that I would do where I'm like, if they don't do it, and I try every angle, I want to think about it, and I overcome and I try and like, I'm gonna battle for it.
Totally.
And I don't get it.
Yeah.
And I walk out. There's something about me where I just erase that memory in my head.
Totally.
It's like you no longer exist.
That's what I would do.
Yeah. And then
I guess I'm more so talking about the rebellious.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna do it. Like they're not gonna do it. Just
if you drop price with a customer and they don't do it, right then
they're not gonna do it.
They're not gonna do it
ever.
I mean, and don't ever go back. Yeah. Like eliminate that potential warm lead from your memory forever.
100%.
And pretend like it's like severance, right?
That's what I would do.
You walk 100%. Out. You walk out the front door and you get severed, and it's like you don't even remember.
Right. Yeah. It's
them.
like
you're gone.
Where am I even at?
They're gone. They're dead. They're gone to you.
Right.
You just do that. Just trust me on this. Just from like as a fatherly figure.
That's the way to do it. Yeah. It's just not even worth it.
Yeah. So I want to talk about solar for a sec, right?
Yeah. Let's do it.
You're an absolute dog in smart home. You're absolute dog at Vivint Solar.
Mm-hmm.
You had a year where you did like 70% of your income came from solar one year, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. You then transitioned companies.
Yep.
And I'm curious about what it was like to be full-time solar guy.
It was cool. It was really cool. I'm actually super grateful that I did it.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. Like it was a really good experience. Largely because when I was at Vivint, specifically Vivint Energy, selling solar with them, like, and again, it's just like a subconscious thing. Like nobody says this, right? But it's like subconsciously, I felt like I was like, dude, like, can't imagine trying to sell this stuff without the alarm attached to it, right? Like, can't imagine having to approach the door without being able to use the scapegoat of like, oh, solar, I'm not a solar guy, I'm a Vivint guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't do solar, right?
Yeah.
But it just taught me so much of how to just get even more creative of how to go approach the door. And I've pulled a lot from that, and I've integrated small things, from that experience into my door approach, into my presentation and closing, that kind of stuff. But it was awesome. I had a really good experience, and I was extremely lucky to be in my position that I was. I was brought over as in a leadership position, and I felt like I had a really big impact, and it was just such a good experience. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. And why, so obviously it's a very, how are the two industries different? Like on the front door level, like how are they different?
I mean, for me, when I went to I was at Pure Light, which I love, Damon, Dusty, all those guys.
Damon, Dusty, all time
some of my best friends. Damon specifically, I just love that guy. I mean, I love them all, but Damon, me and him are like boys.
Yeah.
Right. When I go to the door and I'm just selling solar, the door approach is like, hey, look, like any sort of pressure you're feeling right now is typically related to you feeling like you have to do something right now that can be detrimental to your future. And that's just not the case. Like when I come to your door for the first time, I'm like, we're
not putting solar on.
You don't even sign anything. Like it's, like all I need from you is a like, sure, come back.
Yep.
Like, provided you're actually interested, right? And at the end of the day, if you're not, I love just saying that. I'm not going to twist your arm, right? Yeah. But when it comes to like an alarm thing, obviously the goal is to earn the business right there, right then. And I think that what's the important part of like kind of understanding the difference is one of those, it's, with solar, obviously it's really, really important to build a really good rapport with the customer so that they're like, you know what, I just like this guy. I'm open to the idea. Because I feel like a lot of solar customers are not people who are like, yeah, we wanted solar, come on by. It's like people who are like, all right, whatever.
Slow burn.
Yeah, whatever, I'll look into it. And then you come by and they're like, oh my gosh. Right? Like you could when you're closing a solar customer, you can literally see the second the lights turn on inside of their mind. They're like, holy crap, now I get this stuff.
Yeah.
But with the alarm side, obviously rapport is an important part, but I think a lot of it just comes down to, and this is like a major difference in my opinion, when it comes to like objections in the smart home world, if you're going to earn the business right there and right then, you've got to make sure that you're not just overcoming the objection, but you've got to make sure that you as the salesperson have an immense clarity as to what the customer is thinking. Mm-hmm. And the only way that you can get to that is by asking questions to kind of pull it out of them.
Right. Discovery.
And the reality of it is it's so interesting, right? Because, customers a lot of times will give objections just to give I mean, like, cause they don't know any better, right? It's like, you do a really good door approach and like a lot of the objections people aren't like, it's like solar, right? People would ask the question, what happens if lightning hits the panels?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like if that's your concern, you shouldn't buy a property.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't have a car. You should probably, live underground.
Right.
If that's a real,
it's a real concern.
But that's not a real concern, right?
Yeah.
And so, but when it comes to trying to overcome, objections when you're talking to somebody, trying to sell a smart home or a security, it's like, dude, all that I care about is having insane clarity as to what you're thinking, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. And the moment that you have that clarity, that's when you can go back into your library of knowledge of the product, knowledge of your career, knowledge of interactions, and you can just pull out what's applicable to that situation. Yep. That's why for me, it's like, we always say that every conversation is different. And the reality of it is I think there's so many times where people get into this situation where they knock a door and it's like, well, I know all of this. Let me share all of it with you. And it's like, I've got reps that I've worked with where it's like I can close a deal in genuinely 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm not like I don't claim that it's like, oh, that's like what I do every time, but it's like there's customers who are like, well, how much does it cost? And I'm like, well, I'll answer that, but let me ask you this. Is cost the main concern here, or do you feel like you would even use this? Like, are you asking me how much it costs so you can give like some sort of avenue to get out of this? Or like, do you actually want to know?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when it comes to people like, hey, do you have a card? I always respond the same way. Are you asking because you're interested or do you want me to leave?
Yeah. How do people normally respond to that?
A lot of times I'll be like, well, I mean, I'm just not that interested. And it's like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, and I appreciate that. Right. And so, but at the end of the day, I think it's, you have to ask the questions to get the customer's perspective immediately.
Yep.
Right. Because in solar, a lot of times it's like customers ask, well, are the panels warranted? And if you're a setter, it's like, well, honestly, I'm just the guy to find people who are open to the idea. I don't, that's the guy the engineer or the closer is going to try to share that information with you. That is obviously heavily different than being a smart home pro and having to go up and be like, well,
you're just a war all day.
Exactly. Right. Literally. Yeah. But I do think that this is my personal opinion, which I think is relatively valid. Question-based selling is the root of the vast majority of like successful salespeople's careers. Yep. Asking questions and not just asking questions because you're supposed to, asking questions because it makes sense to try to understand the customer's perspective.
Genuine curiosity. It's creating a genuine connection.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're truly what it sounds like is you're really uncovering through question-based selling.
Yeah.
You're uncovering the customer's true pain point.
100%.
And if you can uncover their true pain point, you can also provide a solution.
Absolutely.
And if you can provide a solution to someone else's pain, you'll have a transaction.
100%. And it's so interesting, right? Because I had this customer, we literally sold him last week, right before we were, heading out to come to Utah for the home opener. And it was so funny because it's like, it's this really cool guy. He's 25 years old. And he's looking at me. He's got a sister in New Mexico. He's like, yeah, she just got Vivint. And I'm like, well, dude, why don't you have it? And he's just like, well, honestly, I don't want to spend the $4,000 or $5,000. And I'm like, well, let me ask you this. What if it wasn't $4,000 or $5,000? He's like, well, then I might be open-minded, right? And it's like, we kind of go through it. And he's like, well, I don't want to affect my debt to income. And it's like, for me, a lot of reps at that point are like, oh, well, he doesn't want it to affect his debt to income. I don't, it's going to some degree, at least a little bit. And it's like the immediate thing that I go is I'm like, in my head, I'm asking myself, is he saying that because that's legitimate or is he trying to find a way out of this?
Yeah.
Like subconsciously, is he trying to find a way out of this? And I just asked him, I said, I think his name was like Sean or something like that. And I'm like, Sean, what's your debt to income ratio? And he didn't have an answer. Like he didn't tell me.
Yeah.
Like he didn't say it was like, oh, it's at 30%.
Yeah.
Oh, it's at like 20%. And it's like, if somebody brings up debt to income and you ask them that question and they don't say, this is my debt to income ratio, concern. That's not the real concern.
Yeah.
And so I told him, I was like, look, at the end of the day, Sean, this is the truth. If you're worried about debt to income ratio, then this shouldn't even be on your radar. Like this isn't a problem about your debt to income, right? Because we're talking, we can structure this thing to where it affects your debt to income by like 0.1%.
Right.
And so it was so funny though, because once I said that, he was like, yeah, I guess that's totally true. And I'm like, Sean, look, at the end of the day, you don't like generic salespeople giving you generic door approaches, and I don't like generic customers giving me generic objections. Let me ask you a hard question, if you don't mind. And he goes, no, I don't mind. What is it that you need for me to earn your business? Like, do you just need a good deal? He's like, yeah, I just need the numbers to make sense. Okay, Sean, tell me what number makes sense. And he goes, I could probably do like $80. And I go, if it's $80 a month, are you down? And he goes, I'm down. And I shook his hand. Sean, I'm going to get you at $80. Let's make this happen. And it was like, sure, you got to go tweak the system, whatever. But it's like,
make it work.
It's like, hey, Sean, if you want it to be at $80 more than anything else, let's just make it happen and just give you what you feel like you need, like a 10 out of 10 need, right? Like, sure, you want a camera on both sides with a spotlight and everything recording for 6 months.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, what do you feel like you need? And he's like, well, somebody tried to steal my truck and that's my main concern. Let's just give you a doorbell camera and a camera in the driveway. And if you want to add stuff later, let's do it. And he was like, and is that $80? Yeah, I can get you at like, okay, it'd be like 85, maybe 90. He's like, okay, that's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But it only happened because it's like, when you ask the hard questions to get the clarity on the customer's perspective, and even overcoming the objection, it's like, okay, well, debt to income is the objection. Well, what is your debt to income?
He doesn't know.
It doesn't know, right? It's like, well, somebody who doesn't know their debt to income is not worried about debt to income.
Yeah. One thing that I love too, and I loved it too, is like, I remember I'd go through my whole pitch, I'd go through my whole presentation, and then we get to the end, and then they would have an objection, and then my head, I'm like, oh boy, time to negotiate.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and you get activated. Right. And you're like trying to find all the solutions. A free month here, like I'll wash your dog, right? Whatever.
Right. I'll clean your dishes, right?
Yeah,
whatever.
And so it's just, I loved the negotiation piece. And I think people really appreciate, like, from my experience, I think subconsciously people appreciate a salesman who's willing to like battle.
100%.
Like, because what it means is like, hey, I'm trying to solve your problem for
Right.
real.
Especially if they're willing to effectively battle.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just like a please, like, come on.
Yeah. It's like genuinely like, hey, let's make it work. And I
Right.
loved getting to the negotiation phase. And it
100%.
was just like, it just activated me. And I think the customers appreciated it too. Because it was like, oh, okay, Skylar's legit. Like, you coming at it from that angle basically says, I'm legit. I'm genuinely here to earn your business.
Totally.
I'm a professional salesman, right? I'm here to make it work. I'm willing to make it happen. And I think just, that shows you just being a genuine guy. And I think it builds trust. And 100%. I think that's why it works for you. And so, kind of the lesson there is just like, in a lot of these deals in Vivint, you just got to fight for them.
You do.
And it's not like in a fightful way of trying to like deceive or bulldoze the customer.
100%.
But it's like doing a more efficient job of uncovering the true problem. And
Absolutely.
A lot of times customers don't realize what their true pain point is.
Exactly.
And you have to help them uncover that.
And
once they see it.
And that's the clarity.
Yeah.
That's the clarity.
The light bulb goes on.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
that's it. And that's where it's like, we're sitting there and we're like, I'm like, Sean, dude, like if this was $10 a month, you wouldn't care about debt to income.
Yeah.
Like if it was, if it didn't cost you much, like
all
that matters is just getting you a good deal.
Yep.
Like that's it. Let's make it happen.
I love it, man. Well, Sky, I could jam with you for hours on this stuff. You're such an incredible salesman, bro. I appreciate working with you, man. It's been so fun the last couple of years. Watch you grow. I'm stoked you're back at Vivint.
Absolutely. Same
I'm fired up to see you like absolutely run it this summer.
I love it. We're going to make it happen.
And I just know a lot of people are going to get a lot of value from this show because your salesmanship is world class.
Sure hope so.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it.